He came home from work, and his wife had thrown all his things out without explanation. William Thompson broke down in tears as he looked at his suitcases scattered across the wet sidewalk. 40 years of marriage to Margaret seemed to have ended on that rainy Thursday afternoon without warning, without a single word of explanation from the woman he had loved since he was 20. That's when he spotted the brown envelope tossed among his underwear, now spread out for the whole neighborhood to see. His hands trembled as he opened it and found photos of himself entering a commercial building in downtown Lakewood. The pictures showed him always on Thursdays, always at the same time, always with the same worried expression on his face. "Margaret, let me explain," he shouted at the closed door of the house where they had built their life together. "I don't want to hear your lies, William." 40 years wasted, came the muffled reply from inside. What she didn't know was that the building housed the physical therapy clinic, where he had been treating a degenerative spinal condition he'd kept hidden for 6 months. The fear of worrying her had made him keep the constant pain and the grim diagnosis he received from the doctor at every appointment a secret. William knelt on the damp grass, picking up the wedding portrait that was now cracked in half. There he was, young and smiling at 25, next to a radiant Margaret in the white dress she had sewn herself. Neighbors began appearing at their windows and gates, whispering among themselves. Mrs. Wilson, the neighbor next door, shook her head with an air of someone who had always known something like this would happen. Mr. Harris, across the street, pretended to water his garden but couldn't take his eyes off the scene. "Margaret, please," he tried again, knocking gently on the door. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now, continuing. The rain began to fall harder, soaking his clothes and the cardboard boxes that held decades of memories. William rushed to put everything into his old car, a blue Civic that barely fit his belongings. Among the wet items, he found the family photo album, the medals he'd earned at the factory for punctuality and dedication, and the pain medication he'd hidden at the back of the closet. Inside the car, he tried calling Margaret dozens of times, but the phone went straight to voicemail. His choked-up voice left desperate messages she wouldn't answer. Their daughter, Jennifer, who lived in Virginia Beach with her husband and 2 young children, didn't pick up. Around 10 at night, Jennifer finally called back. Her voice was different, cold and distant. "Dad, Mom told me everything. How could you do this to her?" "Jennifer, sweetheart, let me explain." "Explain what? That you're cheating on Mom after 40 years of marriage? That you're having an affair with another woman? That's not it, honey. I can prove it." The phone went silent. Jennifer had hung up. William stared at the device in disbelief. His own daughter, the one he'd carried in his arms, taken to school every day, helped with homework, was now condemning him without hearing his side. The night was the longest of his life. He slept in the driver's seat, waking at every sound, hoping Margaret would come out and talk to him. But the house remained silent, all the curtains drawn. The next morning, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of the house. William couldn't believe his eyes. In less than 12 hours, Margaret had made the decision to dismantle the home they'd built together. He needed help. He drove to his younger brother Richard's house in Bloomfield. When he arrived there, still in his wrinkled clothes from the night in the car, he found his sister-in-law Susan with a far from friendly expression. "William, you can't stay here," she said, before he could even explain the situation. "Susan, I just need a place to stay for a few days until I sort out this mess." "Mess? Margaret called me last night. She told me everything about your affair. I won't have a man like that under my roof, not with the girls at home." Richard appeared at the door with an awkward look. It was clear his wife had already made up her mind about the situation. "Bro, you understand, right? With the teenage girls here, Susan doesn't want—" "Richard, I didn't cheat on Margaret. Never in my life. There's an explanation for all this." "Then why were you hiding something from her? Why do the photos show you sneaking into that building?" His brother's question hurt more than the rejection. Even Richard, who had known his character since childhood, doubted him now. During the tense dinner, William tried to explain about his health problems, but was cut off by Susan. "Margaret also asked me about bank accounts and the inheritance you two received from your father. She wants to know where the money is." William's heart nearly stopped. Margaret was digging into his finances too. The inheritance money had been used to pay for expensive medical tests and physical therapy sessions that insurance didn't cover. He'd even sold the gold watch he got from the factory to help cover the costs. He left his brother's house even more devastated. He had nowhere to go. He drove aimlessly through the familiar streets of the tri-state area, passing places where he'd been happy with Margaret. The ice cream shop where they took little Jennifer as a child, the park where they had Sunday picnics, the church where they got married. He stopped in front of the factory where he'd worked for 40 years. That's where he met Margaret, who worked in the cafeteria. That's where he built his career, rising from a laborer to production supervisor. That's also where his back pain started, after years of heavy lifting and awkward positions. The next day, Friday, he arrived at work earlier than usual. He needed normalcy, something that still made sense in his life. His boss, Michael, noticed his worn-out appearance. "William, are you okay? You look like you haven't slept." "Trouble at home, Michael. I'll sort it out." "If you need to leave early to handle it, go ahead. You've never given me trouble all these years." His boss's kindness nearly brought him to tears. At least someone still trusted him. During lunch, he called the physical therapy office to reschedule the session he'd missed on Thursday. "Dr. Robert, it's William. I need to reschedule my appointment." "William, I'm glad you called. I was worried." "You never miss sessions. Did something happen?" That's when William discovered something that changed everything. Dr. Robert Thompson was a distant cousin of Margaret's. They'd met at a family gathering years ago, but William hadn't connected the last name. "Doctor, do you know Margaret Thompson, my wife?" "Margaret, of course, she's my cousin. Actually, what a funny coincidence. She was here at the building last week. I ran into her in the parking lot, talking to a blonde woman. I thought maybe she was waiting for your appointment." William's heart raced. Margaret had been at the building. She'd seen him go in and hadn't asked a single question. Instead, she'd hired a detective to follow him. "Doctor, the blonde woman, what did she look like?" "I didn't see her face well, but she was tall, wore big sunglasses. They seemed to be having a serious conversation." William knew only one woman who fit that description, Stacy Miller, the factory's former secretary who'd been fired 3 years ago for misconduct. Stacy always bothered him with inappropriate advances and even spread rumors about his supposed interest in her, which was never true. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Stacy had run into Margaret in the parking lot and likely planted seeds of suspicion in his wife's mind. But why would Margaret believe a woman she barely knew? On his way out from work, he stopped by the clinic to pick up his medical test results. He needed concrete proof about his treatment. The receptionist, Mrs. Jenkins, a kind woman who always asked about his family, greeted him with concern. "William, what's that look on your face? Did something happen?" "Mrs. Jenkins, did you see my wife here last week?" "Yes, I did. Such a lovely woman. She was in the parking lot talking to a blonde lady. I thought it might be your daughter. Did you hear anything from their conversation?" "I didn't want to intrude, but the blonde woman seemed very agitated, gesturing a lot. Your wife looked serious, paying close attention to what she was saying." William requested copies of all his medical tests and reports. Dr. Robert saw him personally and wrote a detailed statement about his treatment, including the dates of all his appointments. "William, I'm sorry about this mess. If Margaret is your wife, I can speak to her directly to clear things up." "Thank you, Doctor. But I think the problem runs deeper than just a misunderstanding." Driving home, William tried to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. 40 years of mutual trust destroyed by a resentful former employee and the lack of communication between him and Margaret. When he reached his street, he saw an unfamiliar car parked in front of the house. A man in a suit was talking to Margaret at the door, clearly a real estate agent. His wife really was determined to sell everything and start over without him. He parked across the street and waited for the agent to leave. When Margaret went inside, he crossed the street with his medical records in hand. "Margaret," he called, knocking on the door. "I have proof of what I was doing in that building." "I don't want to see your lies, William. Leave before I call someone." "These are medical tests. I'm sick, Margaret. That's why I was going to that clinic. Silence on the other side of the door. William pressed his forehead against the cold wood. I have a degenerative spine condition. I hid it from you so you wouldn't worry. Dr. Robert is your cousin. He can confirm everything. My cousin. Margaret's voice softened slightly. Dr. Robert Thompson. He said he saw you in the parking lot talking to a blonde woman. It was Stacy, wasn't it? The former secretary from the factory. The door opened slowly. Margaret appeared with red, tearful eyes, but still wary. How do you know about Stacy? Because she's hated me ever since she was fired. She's always tried to cause trouble for me at the factory. What did she tell you? Margaret hesitated, still holding the door ajar. She said you'd been having an affair with her for years, that you met in that building to be together. She said you were going to leave our family for her. And you believed her? After 40 years, you believed a woman you barely know. William, she knew details. She knew you always left work early on Thursdays. She knew you'd been acting strange, distant. She even showed me messages. Messages? What messages? From your phone to hers, setting up meetings. William stared at Margaret in disbelief. Stacy had fabricated messages. The situation was far more elaborate than he'd imagined. Margaret, let me in. I'll show you my test results. I'll prove those messages are fake. No, William. I need time to think. The door closed again, but this time William felt a glimmer of hope. Margaret had shown doubt about the accusations. It was a start. That night he slept in the car again, but with the medical tests beside him. In the morning he called Jennifer and left a detailed message explaining the illness and asking her to talk to her mother. Sunday morning, Jennifer showed up at her mother's house. William saw her arrive and waited on the corner. After 2 hours, she came out, walked past his car and signaled for him to come closer. Dad, Mom showed me the text messages. I don't understand how... Your mother still has the messages? Yes? She printed everything. Jennifer, those messages are fake. Someone made a fake profile in my name to ruin our marriage. But Dad, why would anyone do that? Stacy was fired from the factory for misconduct. She always resented me because I never responded to her advances. Now she found a way to get revenge. Jennifer promised to investigate the messages and talk more with her mother. It was small progress but meaningful. On Monday, William decided to seek professional help. He hired a computer technician recommended by a co-worker from the factory to analyze the fake messages. These messages were created with an app that simulates text message conversations, explained the technician Andy. Look here, the timestamps don't match the real metadata. Plus, there are grammar mistakes you'd never make. With the evidence in hand, William returned home. This time he found Margaret watering the garden. She seemed more receptive. Margaret, I found out how Stacy faked those messages. I have the proof here. William, I talked to Jennifer. She told me about your illness. Why did you hide it from me? Because I didn't want to worry you. You already have high blood pressure, and you always get anxious about anything health-related. But 40 years, William, 40 years married. I had the right to know. You're right, I was wrong to hide it, but you were also wrong to condemn me without hearing my side. Margaret lowered her head. It was the first time she admitted she'd been wrong too. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Stacy. She seemed so sincere, William. Said she felt guilty keeping the secret about your affair. She's a manipulator, Margaret, always has been. At the factory, she'd seduce married men just to use it against them later. That's why she was fired. But how did she know your schedule? How did she know you left the factory on Thursdays? She still has contacts there. It wasn't hard to figure out my routine. Margaret finally let him inside. The house felt different, cold. Many of his things had already been packed or removed. It was like she was erasing his presence from her life. Margaret, do you really want to sell the house? I don't know what I want anymore, William. I'm confused. They sat in the living room where they'd watched countless Sunday night movies together, where Jennifer had played as a child, where they'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. Nostalgia hung heavy in the air. "Remember when we bought this house?" William tried to reconnect with the good memories. "I do. You worked double shifts for 6 months to save up the down payment. And you took in sewing jobs to help with the money. We were a team, Margaret." "We were," she agreed, her eyes glistening. William showed her the medical tests and the doctor's statement. Margaret read everything carefully, checking the dates and treatment details. "Degenerative osteoarthritis." "William, this is serious. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I'm scared, Margaret. Scared of becoming disabled. Scared of not being able to work anymore. Scared of being a burden to you." "A burden? William, we're married. For better or worse, in sickness and in health. Do you remember the vows?" "I do. But I also remember you took care of your sick mother for 5 years. I didn't want you to go through that again." Margaret moved closer to him on the couch. It was the first physical contact they'd had in days. "You're a fool, William Thompson. A well-meaning fool, but a fool nonetheless." They talked late into the night, clearing up misunderstandings and sharing fears they'd held onto for years. Margaret confessed she'd felt distant from him these past weeks, noticing he'd been acting strange and withdrawn. "I thought you were losing interest in me," she admitted. 40 years married. I've gained weight. I have wrinkles. I'm not young anymore. Margaret, you're more beautiful to me today than the day we married. The woman I love is right here inside." He touched her chest, over her heart. On Tuesday, Margaret called Dr. Robert to confirm William's treatment. The doctor explained his condition in detail and the importance of physical therapy sessions. "Margaret, your husband is responding well to treatment. With proper therapy and medication, he can live a normal life for many years." "Doctor, is he paying for private treatment because our insurance doesn't cover it?" "Yes. In fact, he even sold a gold watch to pay for some extra sessions I recommended." Margaret hung up with a heavy heart. William had sold the watch he'd received from the factory, his most prized possession, to pay for treatment without straining their finances. That afternoon, she sought out Stacy. She got the address from a former co-worker and went to her house in Clifton. Stacy was visibly uncomfortable seeing her. "What are you doing here?" "I want to know why you lied about my husband." "I didn't make anything up. Your husband was cheating on me with you." "Stacy, I know about the fake messages. My son-in-law is a computer technician and proved they were forged." Stacy tried to shut the door, but Margaret held it open. "You destroyed 40 years of marriage out of revenge. Why would you do that?" "Because your husband ruined my career. I got fired because of him." "You were fired for sexually harassing employees. William never reported you. Other men complained." The argument drew curious neighbors. Stacy, realizing she'd been caught, tried to justify herself. "He rejected me like he was better than me, like I wasn't good enough." He was being faithful to his wife. That's a virtue, not a flaw. Margaret left angry, but with a deeper understanding of how resentment could drive people to cruelty. Stacy had torn apart a family over wounded pride. When she got home, she found William packing his things to leave again. "Where are you going?" "I'm looking for a boarding house. I can't sleep in the car anymore, and you said you needed time." "William, stop this. You're staying here. We're married." "But you said..." "I was hurt and confused. Now I know the truth." They embraced in the middle of the living room, crying together for the first time since the crisis began. 40 years of marriage couldn't be destroyed by a well-crafted lie. On Wednesday, Margaret went with William to his physical therapy session. She met Dr. Robert in person and saw how kindly and professionally he treated her husband. "Mrs. Thompson, it's so nice to finally meet you. William talks about you often. Doctor, thank you for taking care of my husband. I'm sorry for all this confusion." "Confusion? Oh, that woman you met in the parking lot. She seemed unstable." During the session, Margaret watched William push himself to improve. The exercises were painful, but he persisted without complaint. He was the same determined man she'd met in her youth. Jennifer arrived from Virginia Beach on Thursday for a family talk. She had researched her father's medical condition and regretted doubting him. "Dad, forgive me for not believing you. I should have listened to your side first." Honey, you were protecting your mother. I understand. No, Daddy. I was judging you based on appearances. That was wrong. The family began coming together again. Jennifer suggested they seek couples therapy to rebuild the communication they had lost over the years. You love each other, that's obvious. But you need to learn to talk about your fears and worries. Margaret agreed immediately. William, more reluctant at first, accepted when he realized it was important for their marriage's recovery. On Friday, they had their first session with psychologist Dr. Amy Patterson, recommended by Dr. Robert. It was a difficult conversation where each shared their wounds and resentments. William, why did you choose to hide the illness instead of sharing it with Margaret? Because I'm afraid of being a burden. My father became disabled when I was a child, and I saw how my mother suffered taking care of him. And you, Margaret, why did you believe the accusations without talking to your husband first? Because lately I felt he was pulling away from me. When someone appeared confirming my suspicions, it seemed to make sense. The therapy revealed that both had developed insecurities over the years, but had never discussed them openly. William feared being a burden. Margaret feared being abandoned. Over the weekend, they did an emotional cleansing of the house. They took down the for sale sign and rearranged the furniture to create a more welcoming space. William, I want to know everything about your treatment. I want to be part of every decision about your health. And I want you to know all my worries, even the ones that seem silly. They created a weekly conversation ritual, committing to share everything that bothered or concerned them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the second week after their reconciliation, William officially moved back home. Margaret had prepared his favorite dish and reorganized the closet to include his clothes again. I missed you even while sleeping, she confessed. The bed felt so empty. I missed everything too. The smell of your cooking, the sound of you getting ready in the morning, even your soap operas. They were regaining their lost intimacy, but there were still practical matters to resolve. William had lost weight during the crisis and needed to readjust his medical treatment. Dr. Robert adjusted his medication and recommended a more holistic approach, including light physical activity Margaret could join. Morning walks are great for your back and your relationship, the doctor joked. They began walking together every morning in the city park, reminiscing about their dating days when they strolled hand in hand through the neighborhood. Remember when we were dating and walked to the central square? Margaret smiled. I do. You always complained I walked too fast. And you always stopped to buy me ice cream. Some things never change. William paused in front of an ice cream cart. What flavor do you want? The physical therapy routine also became a time for connection. Margaret attended every session, learning the exercises to help William at home. Mrs. Jenkins, you have a knack for this, the therapist noted. Have you ever thought about taking a course? Me? Oh, come on, I'm just a homemaker. Margaret, you've always been good with your hands, William encouraged. Remember how well you took care of your mother? The idea planted a seed in Margaret's mind. At 60, perhaps it was time to discover new talents and interests. Meanwhile, William was facing his own transformations at work. His colleagues had noticed his absence during the crisis and showed their support. William, if you need help with anything, you can count on me, his supervisor Michael offered. Thank you, Michael. I'm learning that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. Being open about his medical condition at work brought unexpected benefits. The company introduced an ergonomics program to prevent similar injuries among other employees. At home, William and Margaret were rediscovering their partnership. She helped him with his physical therapy exercises, and he encouraged her to explore her interest in healthcare. Margaret, why don't you talk to Dr. Robert about that technical course in physical therapy? Do you think I can do it? It's been so long since I've studied. You're smart and dedicated. You always have been. You just never had the chance to show it. The conversation with Dr. Robert was enlightening. He explained there were courses for physical therapy assistants tailored for older adults looking for a new career. Mrs. Jenkins, my clinic always needs competent and compassionate assistants. You'd be perfect. Margaret enrolled in the evening course offered by the city. At 60, she was returning to school after decades dedicated solely to her family. "William, what if I can't keep up? What if it's too hard? Then we'll study together. I'll help you with the subjects I know." The family dynamic was changing for the better. Jennifer visited more often, impressed by her parents' transformation. "You two seem different, more united." "We've been through a storm, sweetheart, but storms can strengthen the roots." William had started attending a support group for people with degenerative conditions. Sharing experiences with other patients helped him accept his situation better. "In the group, there are people much worse off than me," he told Margaret, "and others who live very well with similar limitations. That makes me feel better, knowing we're not alone in this." Weekends became special moments of reconnection. They revived their old habits, watching classic movies, cooking together, and having family over. "Remember Sundays when Jennifer was little?" Margaret sighed nostalgically. "Pastor, the Sunday night movie, and you complaining that I fell asleep on the couch." Some complaints were justified. Their relationship with Jennifer also grew stronger. She started visiting more often with the grandkids, who loved hearing their grandpa's stories about the old days. "Grandpa William, tell us again how you met Grandma," 8-year-old Tommy would ask. "It was at a factory, kiddo. Your grandma worked in the cafeteria and made the best sandwiches around. And then you fell in love?" "Then I started eating sandwiches every day just to see her." Margaret smiled, listening to the story she knew by heart, though it gained new details with each retelling. The physical therapy assistant course was more challenging than Margaret expected, but also more rewarding. She discovered a knack for anatomy and rehabilitation techniques. "William, today I learned about your specific condition. I understand better why certain exercises are important. And I got my own personal therapist at home." Gradually, Margaret became one of the top students in her class. Her classmates, mostly young, respected her dedication and life experience. "Mrs. Jenkins, you inspire us," said a classmate in her early 20s. "My mom is your age and says it's too late to start over. It's never too late to discover who we really are." William's relationship with physical therapy also evolved. He became a model patient, religiously following medical advice and consistently improving. "Your progress is excellent, William," celebrated Dr. Robert. "At this rate, you can reduce your sessions to every other week." "Doctor, I'd like to keep coming every week. I enjoy the routine and Margaret is learning a lot by observing." William's physical improvement brought emotional benefits. He grew more confident and optimistic about the future. At work, his experience with occupational illnesses made him a go-to resource for colleagues with similar issues. "William, the production team is dealing with a lot of back pain. Could you give a talk on prevention?" "Of course, Michael, and I can bring my wife to speak about first aid." The talk was a success. Margaret, applying knowledge from her course, demonstrated basic techniques for relieving muscle pain. "You two make quite the team," Michael remarked after the presentation. 40 years of practice," William replied, hugging Margaret. The couple's reconciliation story began circulating in the community, inspiring other couples facing difficulties. Mrs. Wilson, the neighbor who once judged their situation, sought Margaret's advice about her own marital struggles. "Margaret, how did you two overcome that terrible crisis?" "By talking, Mrs. Wilson, talking a lot and really listening." Their example motivated William and Margaret to volunteer at the community center, offering support to struggling couples. "Our experience can help others," Margaret suggested, "and maybe we can prevent others from going through what we did." The volunteer work brought renewed purpose to their lives. They organized monthly discussion groups about relationships and communication in marriage. "How long have you been married?" asked a young participant. 42 years now," William answered, "but it feels like we're starting over." The discussion groups grew in popularity. Couples of all ages sought William and Margaret's advice. "You saved our marriage," one woman said after 6 months in the group. "You saved yourselves," Margaret corrected. "We just shared our experience." Margaret's graduation from her technical course was a major family celebration. At 61, she received her diploma with the whole family present. "I'm so proud of you," William said, emotional. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Jennifer filmed the entire ceremony, creating a special memory for the family. "Mum, you're my inspiration," Jennifer declared. "It's never too late to start over." Dr. Robert offered Margaret a position at his clinic, a chance to turn her learning into a profession. "Mrs. Margaret, you have a natural gift for caring for people. It would be an honor to have you on my team." "Doctor, I'd be delighted, but I still want to care for my husband too." "Of course. In fact, that makes you even more qualified." Working at the clinic gave Margaret a sense of fulfillment she hadn't expected at this stage in life. She discovered hidden talents and a passion for helping patients recover. "William, today I helped a 70-year-old woman walk again after hip surgery. How does that feel? Useful, important, alive." Margaret's transformation inspired William to explore new horizons. He enrolled in an occupational safety course to specialize in workplace accident prevention. "If I have to live with physical limitations, I can use my experience to protect other workers." "You've always been a protector," Margaret observed. "Now you can protect even more people." The couple was building a new chapter in their lives, one rooted in shared purpose and mutual growth. Their morning walks became sacred moments of connection and planning for the future. "Margaret, remember when we thought our life would end with retirement?" "I do. What a limited view we had. Now I feel like we're starting a new life, more aware, more united." The relationship with their grandchildren also deepened. Tommy and Emily would spend vacations with their grandparents, learning about lasting relationships and overcoming challenges. "Grandpa, are you going to stay together forever?" asked 6-year-old Emily. "We will, my dear. We've learned that true love doesn't give up easily." The lessons learned during the crisis became values passed down to the new generation. William and Margaret created a photo album documenting their journey of reconciliation and new beginnings. It was a visual record of growth and renewal. "Look at our picture from my graduation day," Margaret showed. "We're glowing. And this one from our first talk together. I'm so proud of us." The album became a therapeutic tool they used with other couples at the community center. "You see," they explained, "relationships can rise from the ashes when there's true love and a willingness to grow." 2 years after the crisis, William and Margaret renewed their wedding vows in a simple ceremony at the church where they originally married. 42 years later, I confirm my choice," William declared during the ceremony. "And I promise complete transparency, in joy and in sorrow," Margaret replied. The ceremony was small, just close family and a few friends from the support group, but the meaning was immense. "You've taught us that marriage is a daily choice," Jennifer said during the toast, "and that it's never too late to start over better," added Richard, emotional. William's brother had reconciled with him after understanding the whole situation. Susan also asked for forgiveness for judging too soon. "William, forgive me for not believing you. I've learned an important lesson about judgment." "You're forgiven, Susan. We all make mistakes when we let fear speak louder than love." The vow renewal party was simple but joyful. They danced to the same song from their original wedding, now in their 60s with far more wisdom. "We dance better now," William joked, "because we know the value of what we have," Margaret replied. The traumatic experience had become a source of strength and purpose. They used their story to help other couples overcome similar crises. Stacy had moved away after being exposed for faking the text messages. Some people speculated about her fate, but William and Margaret chose not to hold on to resentment. "She was hurt and made poor choices," Margaret reflected. "I hope she finds peace." "Holding on to anger only harms the one who holds it," William agreed. "I'd rather use our energy to build good things." Forgiveness had been a gradual but freeing process. They learned that forgiving didn't mean forgetting, but rather not letting bitterness control their lives. Couples therapy sessions continued monthly, even after reconciliation. It was a preventive investment in their relationship. "Therapy isn't just for crises," they told friends. "It's preventive maintenance for marriage." Dr. Amy Patterson became not just their therapist, but a friend who witnessed their continued growth. "You're an example of how adversity can strengthen a relationship with emotional maturity." "Doctor, we almost lost 40 years to pride and poor communication. We won't repeat that mistake." Margaret's work at the clinic flourished. She specialized in elderly care and became a reference in the area. "Mrs. Jenkins has the hands of an angel," patients remarked, "and the heart of a mother," their families added. Her personal experience made her especially empathetic toward patients facing degenerative diseases and their families. William also thrived in his new role as a workplace safety instructor. His personal experience with occupational injuries added credibility to his training sessions. "Folks, don't make the same mistakes I did," he'd warn during his talks. "Don't hide pain or discomfort. Seek help before it becomes a bigger problem." His lectures were always in high demand because they combined technical knowledge with lived experience. The community center expanded its couples support program due to the success of the activities led by William and Margaret. "You've created something special here," the center coordinator acknowledged. "Couples from all over the area come here for help." "It's rewarding to see families coming back together," Margaret replied. "And to know our pain has turned into healing for others," William added. On weekends, they often received calls from couples in crisis seeking emergency guidance. "You can come to our house," they always offered. "Our door is always open for those who need help." The house that was nearly sold during the crisis became a safe haven for many struggling families. 5 years after the crisis, William and Margaret published a book about their experience. It was an honest account of how to overcome distrust and rebuild relationships. After the Storm: How We Saved Our 40-Year Marriage. Jennifer read the title. "I'm so proud of you both." "We want our story to inspire other couples not to give up," William explained. "And to show that age isn't a barrier to starting over," Margaret added. The book launch was an emotional event. Many couples they had helped attended to show their support. "You changed our lives," said a 70-year-old man. "We were going to separate after 50 years of marriage." "It wasn't us," Margaret replied. "You chose to fight for your love." All proceeds from the book went to the community center to expand family support programs. "Money was never our goal," they explained. "We just wanted to share our experience." The book's national impact led to invitations for talks in other cities. William and Margaret traveled across the United States, sharing their story and helping other couples. "I never imagined we'd be traveling the country in our 70s, William joked during a talk in Miami. "And certainly never thought we'd be authors," Margaret laughed. The trips strengthened their partnership even more. They discovered they worked exceptionally well together as speakers. "William has a way of touching people's hearts," Margaret observed after each presentation. "And you have a gift for giving practical advice," he'd reply. Back in Lakewood, they continued their local activities and kept growing personally and professionally. Margaret had become a supervisor at the physical therapy clinic, recognized for her skill and dedication to patients. "Mrs. Jenkins, you could open your own clinic," Dr. Roberts suggested. "Thank you for the trust, Doctor, but I enjoy working as a team. I'm always learning something new." William became the safety coordinator for the entire factory, implementing innovative accident prevention programs. "Your accident rates plummeted after you took over," Michael praised. Personal experience teaches a lot about prevention. Their grandchildren, now teenagers, often ask them for relationship advice. "Grandpa, how do I know if I really like someone?" asked Tommy, now 13. "When you care more about their happiness than your own." "And Grandma, how do I know if I can trust someone?" "Observing whether her actions match her words, my granddaughter." The lessons passed down were the fruit of lived experience and wisdom gained through pain and overcoming. At 70, William retired from the factory with an emotional celebration. 45 years of service were recognized by colleagues and management. "William, you leave behind a legacy of dedication and perseverance," the director said in his speech. "Your story inspires us all." "Thank you for giving me the chance to grow here," William replied emotionally. "This factory was my second home." Margaret continued working at the clinic, now reducing her hours to have more time for volunteer work. "Work keeps me young," she explained, "and gives me purpose every day." William's retirement opened new possibilities for the couple. They began traveling more, always combining leisure with volunteer work. "Let's explore the United States and help couples along the way," they planned together. Our retirement will be more active than our working years, Margaret joked. During a trip to New Orleans, they met an elderly couple going through a crisis similar to what they had experienced. "Can you help us?" the woman asked. "We've been married 50 years and are nearly splitting up over misunderstandings." "Of course we can," Margaret replied immediately. "Our experience is at your service." They spent an entire week helping the couple rebuild communication and overcome unfounded distrust. "You've given us our lives back," the man thanked them at their farewell. "You already had everything inside you," William replied. "You just needed help finding it again." Episodes like this repeated in many cities they visited. William and Margaret's story became a national inspiration for mature couples. 10 years after the crisis that nearly destroyed their marriage, they celebrated their golden anniversary with a grand party. 50 years married, William announced emotionally during the toast. 40 good, 10 difficult, and the last 10 magnificent. "And here's to 50 more," Margaret replied, met with applause from family and friends. The party brought together people from every phase of their lives, factory colleagues, clinic patients, couples they had helped, and decades-long friends and family. "You've built an enormous extended family," Jennifer observed in her speech. "Family is who we choose to love," Margaret replied. "And you are all our family." During their golden anniversary waltz, William whispered in Margaret's ear, "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for giving me reasons to fight." The love that had nearly been lost to pride and miscommunication had transformed into something deeper and more mature. At 75, William still attended physical therapy regularly, but his condition was stable and he lived a normal life. "Dr. Robert, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't hidden my illness. Your condition might even be better. Emotional stress always worsens degenerative conditions." "At least I learned my lesson. Now I tell Margaret everything. And that's good for both of you." Margaret, at 73, remained active at the clinic and in volunteer work. Her energy inspired people much younger than her. "Mrs. Thompson, what's the secret to staying so lively?" she was often asked. "Purpose," she always replied. "Having a reason to wake up every day." The community center honored the couple with a commemorative plaque for their service. William and Margaret Thompson, examples of love, perseverance, and dedication to others, the coordinator read during the ceremony. "This honor represents all the couples who came to us," William said. "Every story of reconciliation is our victory too." In their later active years, they established a fund to help couples facing financial hardship during therapy. "Money shouldn't stand in the way of saving a marriage," they argued. "Every family deserves a second chance." The legacy of William and Margaret went beyond their own story. They had become symbols of how mature love can overcome any adversity when there's mutual commitment. At 80 years old, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, they sat on the porch of the home they had almost lost, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. "William, do you regret anything?" "I regret hiding my illness, but I don't regret the journey we took afterward." "Neither do I. We discovered who we truly are these past few years. And that true love grows stronger with time when nurtured the right way." The sun slowly set over Lakewood, casting light on the wrinkled but happy faces of the couple who had turned a marital crisis into an exemplary love story. "Margaret, thank you for believing in our love when even I doubted it. Thank you for teaching me it's never too late to start over, William." They kissed gently, as they had every day for 55 years, knowing they had built something far more valuable than a marriage. They had built an everlasting love rooted in truth, forgiveness, and mutual growth. The end. And what did you think of this story of love and resilience, dear listener? William and Margaret taught us that the greatest challenges can turn into the greatest victories when faced with courage and true love. Share your thoughts on this emotional journey in the comments, and let us know if you've heard similar stories of couples who overcame great hardships. Your input means so much to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories.